There we go. I am resident of Colorado, Joel Sains, joined here by my buddy Butch RosenBalm. We're here to discuss Once Upon a Time in the West. Yes, the lazy ass host got off his ass and pulled out his DVD. Butch always brings the DVDs. The back of it.
Not behind me. It's not much.
Mine's just in the other room. I'm just lazy at times to go get them. But as you can see, the back, you see Claudia Carnell, Henry Fonda, Jason Robards, Charles Bronson. Great, great movie. But when did you first watch this one, Butch?
Bits and pieces over the years. Couple longer bits and pieces. When this came out, I forget exactly when. I want to say 2003. We were talking about this before, and but I'm not exactly sure. And I'm really bad when I get a DVD to like put it in before I go to bed and watch 30 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes to. Of course, obviously, sometimes I'd fall asleep and miss parts of it. So first saw the biggest part of it, let's say late 90s, early noughts.
Right. You sound like you're as bad as me, because when I put in a movie, like I'll sit there in my chair. And I've seen the movie so many times, I'm like, I'm tired. I'm dozing off. I wake up, the movie's over.
I have never done that. I don't know what you're talking about.
There you go. There you go. Oh, goodness. But this movie stars Henry Fonda, who this is his first time working with Sergio Leone, Italian Western director. What's interesting is, what people may not know is, Henry Fonda was actually so was Charles Bronson, who's also in this movie as harmonica. Both men were Sergio Leone talked to them about playing the role of the unnamed man in the Dollar Trilogy, the role Clint Eastwood would go on to play. But they turned the role down, oddly enough. Clint Eastwood, who's a big television star at the time, accepts, and history is made. I always found that one strange, because I've talked to you about this before, how Fonda didn't really take risk in his career till later. And I think this movie was a huge risk for him. Not necessarily financial, mind you, but Fonda, for the most part in his career, I think with the exception of, I think it's Fort Apache, I might be wrong, because he's sort of playing an in-between character on that, in my opinion. He's sort of heelish in that, somewhat. I know John Wayne's more the good guy in it, to a degree. With this, he's playing a full-on bad guy. And he had never really done that in his career. So he'd give an interview. There's an interview out there, and I forgot to send it to you, so I apologize. I'll send it to you when we're done here. But there's an interview out there with him in it where he's talking about, a actor friend of his, and the actor friend of his was Eli Wallach. He doesn't mention this in the interview, but Eli Wallach told him, "To hell with the script, just go, just go. You'll fall in love with him." And he went and he got his baby blues. He got contacts put in. He put on a fake mustache, and Leone took one look at him. Off. Fonda couldn't understand why he wanted him to look like him until he shot the movie and then saw it with his wife. And he was also saying that Leone could imagine people, the camera turning and people seeing it's Henry Fonda after this family is slaughtered, and saying, "Jesus Christ, that's Henry Fonda." Because Fonda he had never played a villain. And it is, to me, to this day, this is still shocking all these years later to me. Because every time I go back and watch this, it's like, holy shit, did he do a great job. And I'm not shocked, because he's a great actor, but this role is just all-time heelish. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
No, I'm just nodding because yeah. Those blue eyes. I being a heterosexual male, I don't normally look at other men's eyes, but when Leone loves his close-ups, and those blue eyes of Henry Fonda's, I mean, they just stare at you. And Leone was right. course, we already knew Henry Fonda was a good actor, and he does such a great job. He's even, he's like the villain you love to hate, but also, I mean, I always find myself kind of rooting for him a little bit. I mean, yeah, he's a bastard, and I can't wait for him to get his due. But there's something to be said for being a good, interesting villain rather than
Yeah.
Snidely Whiplash twirling his mustache.
Yep. Yeah, I love how this is all set up too. For the beginning, you have these three men, they're in dusters, and Woody Strode is in this movie at the beginning. There's the best theme of this movie that I've tried to explain to people over the years. Every person you see, from Woody Strode to Jack Elam, Henry Fonda, they've all played good guys in their career. So you have these actors who are good, who are played good guys, who are now playing heels. And Jack Elam, Woody Strode, and the other actor, I always forget his name, but they're waiting at the train station, and I like how they harass the attendant. they're stuffing them in the box. The one woman's running away in the middle of the desert.
And the thing is they never say anything until harmonica shows up.
Yep.
Leone. I was thinking when I was rewatching this, I was like, Leone would have made a great horror movie director. He loves his music cues and his jump cuts. I mean, there's some scenes like with the train, and it is so horribly loud. I mean, it almost hurts. And the whole scene, I mean, it goes on like, I don't know, good 5-10 minutes with the three guys and harmonica. The ticket taker, he talks a little bit, but really Woody Strode and the rest don't say anything. And then it's such a great, this train pulls in and they're like, okay, they're ready to blow this guy away. And the train starts to pull out and they're like, well, okay, I guess he didn't come. And then you start hearing the harmonica tune for the first time and they all turn around. And harmonica's like, Frank sends you? And they kind of smile, yeah. Did you bring a horse for me? And they kind of look at each other and kind of laugh again. No. Guess we're one short. And this tells you right away what kind of movie you're in. And Charles Bronson just looks at him and goes, nope, you brought too many.
Yeah.
And boom, right away, if you had any doubts or confusion about what this movie was going to be about, you learn what it is right there.
Yeah, it's one of the best opening shootouts in a Western, really, too, because it's so well built. And I think because you have these, you don't know what these men, they're for the train, but you're not sure if they're there for somebody or just for the train themselves. I agree with you about Leone could have been a great horror director. I think the closest, in my opinion, he came, I know it's not horror, but it has some elements to it, is Once Upon a Time in America, which is a gangster movie, but it has this weird sort of, well, who's after these guys or these people? It's weird, though. I've never seen a mob movie done the way he did it, and even since then. But with this, Leone was known for his Westerns, and you get this tense buildup of you don't know why they're there. And all the lines are great, even though you're right, they don't talk until until they meet harmonica, and it's such great dialogue. And then the build up, and then when there's silence between them, but the music's sort of still playing, and you hear it, and then boom, 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 boom. I love how they get Woody Strode to just nick Charles Bronson's harmonica.
Interesting thing about Woody Strode's character. And for anybody that hasn't ever heard this, there was at least a quick, I wouldn't say rumor. Apparently Leone said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we got Clint Eastwood and Lee Von Cleef and Eli Wallach to play these three guys?
Yeah, I've heard that.
There to be a serious thing from what I've read, but that would have been great. Another callback, but what Woody Strode has is it's called a mare's leg. It is a Winchester. I want to say 1870. And what it is, it's a rifle, and it's basically chopped down like a sawed-off shotgun. And you see this what's his name? Steve McQueen uses it in Wanted Dead or Alive, and for all you kids in your Firefly, what's her name? Gina Torres in Firefly, she carries one, and it's a rifle cut down to a handgun. Well, it's longer than your regular handgun, but Woody Strode. It's a recurring thing. I wonder how many of these movies we've done that Woody Strode's in. We won't have to find one that he's the star in.
Well, I think the one we've talked about a little bit was The Professionals. Now, he's not the star of that movie, but that's as much, I think that's pretty much everybody's movie in a way. It's not just Burt Lancaster and Lee Marvin's. Yeah, they're the main ones, but Woody Strode's character is just as important as the rest of them, too. I love how he uses a bow and arrow in that movie, by the way.
Honestly, in The Professionals, not to get off track, I always thought they were trying to imply that he was either an Indian or had been lived/raised by Indians. He seemed to be very much a ranger or, Boy Scout type. He knew what to do, where the rest of them, obviously, like Burt Lancaster was obviously a city boy.
Yeah, I think that it's very pretty much heavily implied that each man has their own specialty. I think that's the one thing that gets sort of laid out right away, because Burt Lancaster's character is the one character who isn't there right away, and it's okay. We're allowed to get off track. I said so. God damn it. But right. But he when he shows up, like, what else do you need? Well, we need a dynamiter, and Lee Marvin's character points to a picture of Burt Lancaster's character, and that's how they go and find him, and they find out he was in jail. But so yeah, but I agree with you. His character, Woody Strode's character, I do think was sort of raised by Indians. I do think that's really well hinted too, because he seems to know a lot about how to use the bow. He's really a great character in that movie. But he's an interesting character in this movie too, even though he gets killed right away, because you're like, well, who's this Frank? I think that's the one thing all three of these characters do really well. It's like, even with, Charles Bronson as well as Harmonica, which is one of my great name for a character. But it's like, okay, who's this Frank guy, and why is this guy who plays that harmonica after him? Like, why is he seeking him out? Because all of a sudden there's a shootout. It's like, so you're still left with a question of, is there a grudge, right? It's a great it's a great introduction. What did you think of the McBain family?
Well, obviously we don't get much impression of them at all, because right after the scene we just discussed, we see this family, and they're obviously about to have some big shindig. And this older guy with this crazy Italian hair is like, need to go pick up. I can't remember if he calls her your mother. Yeah, he says your mother, and the kid's like, my mother died, and the father comes out and just slaps the shit out of him. He's like, go pick up your mother. And I think it's two sons and a daughter, and there's a really great thing right there where the father, I believe, is talking to the daughter, and you hear these crickets. And then
Yep.
And it's for something that's a sound to just suddenly stop. It's really kind of subtle. You don't necessarily notice it at first, and you're like, wait a minute. And then the family gets wasted.
It's creepy too.
It is. I mean, again, going back, it could be a good horror scene, and you see these guys walking up. I think everybody in this movie wears a duster of some kind.
Yeah.
They're like, I forget. There's 5 or 6 guys, I think, and they walk up, and there's the youngest child, is the youngest male child's left, and he's like, "What are we gonna do, Frank?" And then the camera cuts to Henry Fonda just standing there, and you're on the way. Oh shit! And like you said, Henry Fonda and his guys just slaughtered this family. I mean, gave them no chance. Shot him from ambush. Well, since you use my name, we're going to have to kill him. And then I don't remember if I think Henry Fonda pulls his gun out and you don't see the child actually die, but he pulls the gun out and he shoots. So it's pretty obvious what's going on here.
Yeah, I like the fact that once they turn the camera, Fonda's character is smiling at the little boy, like in a sinister tone way of like,
Not,
oh
not
hi.
a Pennywise kind of smile, but just hi, you're okay with me, and then you realize, no, you're not okay with him.
I'm like, when I first, I'm telling like it, run, run, run. But I love how, what are we going to do with this one, Frank? And Fonda's character just gives him the coldest look you could give a man. Like, he almost, I thought for a moment Fonda was going to shoot him and then the boy.
Yeah, I did too. I think that every time, even though no, that's not going to happen.
So, and then I love how he just draws the gun so then he cocks it and they make the sound. And then one of the best effects in this movie is when he shoots it, it gives you that smoke that would come out of a gun. And we sort of see that too in the movie we talked about, Wyatt Earp, where the smoke comes out and then the guy gets put on fire. Bill Pullman's character, so belly gets put on fire a bit. But with this, instead of a fire, it's just smoke, and then it cuts to the train, which is a really neat effect. And this introduces actually our star of the movie, Claudia Cardinal, who we haven't talked about yet, because I always tell this to people. I say, well, yes, Claudia Cardinal is the star of this movie, but she's not introduced right away. You hear about her, but it's a great segue that you do hear about her, at least because you know she's coming. And you know that she's going to be in this black dress and this straw hat. And as soon as she stepped off the train, I'm like, that's the woman from The Professionals. But
as Joe Bob Briggs might say, Claudia Cardinal and her two outstanding talents.
Yes, I believe this is the first woman who gets the lead top billing in a Western. Which to me is shocking, considering what's her name, Raquel Welch, was in a good deal of Westerns, and it's like she is a damsel in this movie, but I like it's sad because once she steps off the train, you know what's happened to the family. You know that this is the woman they were sent to go. The boy was sent to go get before being 86th into the ground. But he didn't make it. But he didn't kick out, as they say. But no, she is like walking around, and then she gets a ride. And I love the line by the guy who drives the horse when he stops. He goes, she's like, what's the matter with you? I said I was in a hurry. He's like, don't a train stop? And I love that line because it's, in many ways, the trains are the train is a part of the story's plot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And she plays that scene where she comes off the train and, it goes on like, I don't know, let's say 30 seconds, maybe I don't know. But you can tell time is passing. Like people get off the train and she's still looking around. She's still looking around, and she realizes something's wrong.
Yeah.
Her face is like, I mean, she sells it. Yes, she's a very attractive woman with some, an amazing figure. But I really feel like she was underappreciated for her acting ability. I'm sure there was some language issues with all the English, but she does a good job, I think, through the whole film. And
yeah.
She is a damsel. She does get into a little bit of distress, but it's not like, oh, save me. I mean, she has more to do. It's a real role. It's not just, she's tied to the tree and waiting on Tarzan to come save her.
No, she's not. She's, for a woman who we'll get there, but she stops at this local bar, that has a bathhouse, and she's in there, and you hear she's talking. Then you hear these horses. Then you hear shooting, and you hear this little music start to. I'm thinking, what's this? And you hear this. Cheyenne's theme and then watch Jason Robards. This here, I love harmonica. I love Charles Bronson in this, but Jason Robards plays my favorite character in this movie. He is absolutely just gold to watch in this.
He is. He's a. I don't want to say strange. He's a unique actor.
Yes.
Growing up when I did, he by that time he was doing, the westerns had pretty much dried up, and he did some Disney movies, which off the top of my head I don't recall, but I know, I knew I'd seen him before,
Yeah.
and he just, he comes across for a while, even though we know Frank's a bad guy,
Yeah.
we still have ambiguity with him. We
Yeah.
don't know what harmonica is. We feel like Cheyenne's a bad guy. We get told pretty quickly he at least is thought to be. And Jason Robards does a really good job. And Charles Bronson, God bless him, he's probably the most underrated actor ever. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of people I know and have talked to about him, they only know him from Death Wish, and it's like, if you only know him for that, you're missing a lot of great films. This is one of them, and it's sad to me that he's such a good actor and he's only remembered for shooting a bunch of punks in New York.
Yeah, and in LA, and look, I'm a fan of the Death Wish movies too, but I agree with you. Like, if you go back and look at Charles Bronson's career, to me, this performance here is what catapulted him really into stardom, into be able to do those movies really, because he had turned down other roles, and he was in the Twilight Zone, a couple Twilight Zone episodes prior to this too. So he was on television, he was around, and here comes this role that, again, Sergio Leone wanted him for originally, the good, all the Dollar Trilogy movies, just like he wanted Fonda, both men turning him down, them not knowing what it was going to go on to be, obviously. But here he is. He's playing a character that, to me, I'm going to burn in hell, and to me, is better than what Eastwood's character was, in my opinion. In one movie, Bronson builds intrigue, questions, suspense about his character. Like, who is this? Like, yeah, harmonica. That's not a real name. But it's interesting that he can play this harmonica. Like, did he just learn that or what? And you're asking this. I agree with you. I love the interaction between Robards and Bronson. How Jason Robards takes the light and he just goes, and he's shining. It's like going back and forth, and you see Bronson playing that harmonica and looking up. It's such a tense killer scene. It's like, holy shit, what's gonna happen? And you get the sense, he goes, I love how Jason Rhodes goes, do you know how to play music from that? And he's pointing to the gun.
How do you do the is it Marlena Dietrich line? Put your lips to it and blow, or something. There's an important scene there that apparently, in my understanding, was originally cut out of American showings. We find out that the three guys that were sent to kill harmonica are allegedly were sent by Cheyenne, and you're like, okay. And he's like, nah, if you killed them, I didn't send them. I'm kind of an inflated ego, but it makes, you find out later it makes sense. Spoiler alert, it was Frank. but you kind of have some of the what's the second Dollars movie where Clint Eastwood is tossing the two games
for a few dollars more.
He's kind of bouncing between sides, pitting them against each other. Harmonica kind of does that with Jason Robards and Cheyenne and Henry Fonda's Frank, and you're never it's a pretty good while into the film before you really can determine what side he's on.
Hold on, think about something.
Oh,
I'm trying to think what I just said to you, because I'm thinking of the $a few dollars more. Fistful of Dollars.
For a few dollars more and
Yeah.
Good and the Ugly.
Yeah. I was trying to make sure I was right. So I'm slipping. But I think that's the thing too. Like when he says he says he grabs Cheyenne's duster, and I love Cheyenne. He goes, "You interested?" Or he grabs one of the men's dusters. He said, and I love Robert's lines. "You interested in fashion's harmonica?" And it's a great line. He goes, "I met 3 of these dusters a while back ago. They were waiting for a train." And Jason Robards' Cheyenne is like, "So what? That doesn't mean nothing to me, at first." He goes, inside the dusters were 3 men. Inside the men were 3 bullets. And Robert's reaction to this is classic. He's like smiling. "That's a crazy story, harmonica. No one's got the guts to wear these dusters except Cheyenne's men. And Cheyenne's men don't get killed." And the ego of it is beautiful. And I love what he said. He goes, "Yeah, play harmonica." When he starts playing it, he says, "Yeah, play harmonica. Only don't bullshit. Watch those false, so you can't bullshit. Watch those false notes." And as Roberts turns and walks away, he just intentionally messes up.
Some of that bar scene with I can't think of the actor's name that plays the bartender. I couldn't care less about him. He's obviously trying to hit up Claudia Cardinale. Her character's name is Jill. Wonder why I can remember that name so easy. But it comes around. We find out Claudia Cardinale gets to come to the family there, and with the impression we're under is that there's going to be a wedding. She finds out that the husband and the kids have been killed. Turns out they were married a month ago. They're already married.
Yep.
He's the sole heir. And so you've got really, I can't remember. I don't believe. Actually, I take it back. I think the guy that hired Frank, the railroad guy, and if you're new to westerns, 99 times out of 100, the railroad guy is the bad guy.
Yep.
Let me just go ahead and help you with that one. Claudia Cardinale stuck in between the railroad guy and Frank and Cheyenne and harmonica. And there is a good portion of the film before you find out what's going on and who should she listen to, who should she work with, and it's just interesting scenes. There's some interesting lines. One thing I kept noticing, Sergio Leone. I know we all know he loves his close-ups. We've all seen. Maybe we haven't all seen, but he loves his close-ups in the Dollars films with the eyes and everything, and it has been made fun of. But I kept thinking, God, Sergio Leone loves his shots of men sweating in the sun.
Yep.
I realize there's no air conditioning and they're always sweating. That's just like, okay. I feel like I'm watching. At times, I felt like I was watching an ad for underarm deodorant or something. There's just so much sweating going on.
What's funny about that too is when you notice Jack Elam. In the beginning, his face looks all like sweaty. He's got honey on his face because that's how they get the fly to attract to him. So they got this honey on his face.
He's dubbed, isn't he? He sure, because that does not sound like Jack Elam's voice.
I'm not sure. That's the one thing. I agree, because when you listen to Support Your Local Sheriff, you're right, it doesn't sound like it. Unless they just I'm wondering when they shot this maybe in Italy and they were doing it like in Italian perhaps, they never got him to come back and read in English and somebody else dubbed him later. It could be.
It sure seems like it. For the viewers and listeners that don't know, this film was filmed in Italy and in Spain, with a few scenes somewhere in America. I believe it's at Warner Brothers Studio or Paramount. at one of the studios. Most of this was filmed in Europe.
Yeah.
And I tell my wife, I said, you can always tell a film made in Italy, and we always say the same thing. All the last names end in a vowel, and you look at the credits. But darned if. So now there's a few scenes filmed in Monument Valley. The only ones I can think of are when the if you will, the cab driver is taking Jill to her homestead, which we find out will be called Sweetwater.
Yeah.
There's some obvious scenes in Monument Valley, but all the shots in Europe, and I believe most of the exteriors were in Spain. You really can't tell if you don't know it. He did a really good job of picking places to film. Whereas if you start watching enough spaghetti westerns, you start seeing, you can tell, yeah, that doesn't look like America. Yeah, there's nowhere in America that looks like that.
With this, it's tough, right? He does a really good job making you think this is America with his shooting and the way he shoots in many ways, this feels like a movie John Ford would have made because of the desert. We've talked about. We haven't got to talk about The Searchers fully yet. We will, but we've talked. I've said this. The Searchers is desert porn. In this way, this is desert porn with a plus. But it's interesting because you're right. They have all these scenes. It's hot. You got all these people sweating. It's just like, damn, dude, you did a really good job with the heat and the desert. It's amazing. And I love how when they're coming up to the house, you see the bodies splayed out. It would be a thing like Jason Voorhees would be proud of. Like, oh, I did that. But it's like they're just splayed out there. Like, they don't even got it buried. Here you go. It's like a display.
Well, I'm pretty sure in the desert that's probably what they would have done. I mean, because you don't really have to worry about them rotting. They're going to not mummify, but they're going to dry out pretty quick. So, yeah. I guess to prove to Jill that the family is deceased, it's pretty easy to just take somebody's word for it. But I almost don't want to reveal too much about this film because it's such a good, these two are together and these two are together and then these two are together and then wait, these two are together. Now these two are, the kind of shifting loyalties and it's a really good story and just beautiful film, interesting people, interesting story. It's, some movies and TV shows, I think, get a little too proud of their backstory. I'm looking at you, Chris Carter, in the X-Files, where they start telling all this stuff, Monster of the Week or whatever, and they keep building the mythology, and they get away from what they were originally going to tell. And so then later, as the story has gone this way, they're like trying to pull it back over, and they get a little too involved with storytelling or expanding the mythology and getting away from the point of the film or the point of the series. And this for me, this movie walks the fine line. There's a few scenes you're like, okay, what's the point of this? And then you find out.
Yeah.
And it always, every scene, it may move it forward only this much, but then the next scene is going to be, I'm just trying to get it in the camera here. It's going to be so much more. And that little bit that you got before, there's a lot of moments in this film if you've never seen it.
Yeah, one of the best things that I think is done with this Western is we were talking about The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, how it's like a mystery a bit. Like who shot Liberty Valance, right? You want to believe it was Jimmy Stewart's character because, yes, Jimmy Stewart has been the man in some goddamn Westerns. But with this, you are getting a mystery, and you're getting question, a bit of an answer here, just to get you along, then another bit of an answer, then another question, then another. It's really well paced.
Yeah.
It's not this movie, for as long as it is, because it's pretty lengthy, it's never dull, ever. Like with the acting, one of my favorite scenes, and you were talking about she's not really a damsel, and you're right. Jill is not. because she chooses the cab driver's like, let's go back into town. Let's go back in this to town. She's like, no. I mean, she literally has nothing. At first, when you're watching, she has nothing to say for her, but then you realize, holy shit, she really did love this guy. Like, this woman loved this man and wanted to be part of this family, which is really noble of her to do, because you are putting isn't a woman who doesn't know the score. She very well does. She knows if this family just got slaughtered, like there was no more, and they pin it on Cheyenne. That's another point of the Frank's men wearing the dusters. They're trying to frame Cheyenne. I think the one guy too next to Frank sort of tries to look like Cheyenne, close enough. Not exactly, but to a degree. He has the beard and stuff, but he tends to annoy Frank, which you shouldn't do, because it'll get your ass shot. But she really does a good job, because then after Bronson confronts Wobbles, which I love that name, he puts his tie in like a washer roller. He's like this, cranking it. What did you think of that?
That truthfully, it made me think of Batman, the comic books, not any of the movies or TV shows. That I grew up in with the 1970s Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams Batman. He would walk into a bar and like, I need information on the Joker. This is your one chance. And of course, nobody would give information. So he goes, picks somebody up, starts punching them. You just kind of works the story the way through, and that's what it makes me think of is the difference being, of course, that he'll probably, as opposed in opposition to say Batman, he might kill you. You don't know what he's going to do. I mean, he could choke that big fella up, and he finally he gives Wobbles enough, shall we say, incentive to start spilling some beans and start filling in some holes for us in the audience.
Yeah, I love what Bronson's character does here. He's interrogating Wobbles. He says Frank wasn't there. I don't know where he was. He was at the McBain's. And, that was Cheyenne. I love what he says. That was always one of Frank's tricks, faking evidence. I'm like, oh, shit. This is somebody who knows Fonda's character. It answers somewhat of a question so much that you are now, if you weren't fully invested in harmonica before, you are now. Like, this scene to me is so important, because after all the gunplay you get in the beginning and the tense moments that harmonica's looking for Frank, well, now he sort of knows Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's such a key scene with this. It might not seem like much to some people. I agree with you. I don't want to spoil this movie, but people do need to go watch it, because it's just an amazing. By the way, John Carpenter is on the fucking special features of this shit. John Carpenter.
I've got a little section for that coming up, but since you brought him up, we'll go ahead and cover it. Anybody that knows me for very long finds out really quick. One of my favorite films of all time, let alone by John Carpenter, is Assault on Precinct 13. And I'd either forgotten or it's been a while since I watched the scene. There's two very specific lines in Assault on Precinct 13 that come from Once Upon a Time in the West. It's later in the film. Harmonica is talking to Frank, and Frank's like, what's your deal? What are you doing? Are you going to tell me? And he tells him, only at the point of death, which is what Napoleon Wilson says in Assault on Precinct 13. And a little bit later, Jason Robards' character Cheyenne talks about, I forget exactly what episode, but he says, preacher once told him he had something odd about him. He has something to do with death. Again, that's said by Napoleon Wilson about himself in Assault on Precinct 13. And I'm doing some research. According to IMDb, the character of Napoleon Wilson is kind of based on harmonica. Doesn't say much, but he's, you could obviously say he was also a little bit based on Clint Eastwood's character. None of them say much.
Yeah.
But when they do, you need to pay attention. And John Carpenter loves westerns. Anybody that starts learning about John Carpenter's career knows that. And God bless him. I wish he would make a western, or I wish he had made a western. Because
one of our hashtags in this, I'm sorry for cutting you off,
is
going to be John Carpenter.
But you look at John Carpenter. Like I just said, he loved westerns. But by the time he came up, the western was pretty much dead.
Yeah.
So many of his films are westerns. Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York, Escape from L.A., Ghosts of Mars.
Vampires is.
I don't know. Yeah, John Carpenter's Vampires. They're westerns. I mean, sure, the alien kind of messes with it, but the setting of the thing could just as easily be in the American West in the 1880s.
Yep.
He loves. I mean, you have Sergio Leone would have made a good horror director if he wanted to be one, of course, in my opinion. And John Carpenter would have been a great Western director. And I think that's in anybody's opinion if he had the opportunity, if he didn't come up when he did. Just like my favorite director, George Romero, he really didn't want to do horror. He wanted to do other things, but apparently horror was what he was good at. And so that's what he, did.
Yeah. I think too, it's been said that John Carpenter does want to direct a movie. How cool would it be if he said, "I'm going to remake Once Upon a Time in the West"? I'd be there. I would be there with bells on.
I would go, of course, go see it. I just don't see him remaking it. I mean, he doesn't really strike me. And I know it's odd to say it because Assault on Precinct 13 is another remake of Rio Bravo / El Dorado / Rio Lobo. Mm. But he's to me, he's not really. Well, I guess that's not true because he made some remakes and sequels, but he would definitely put his own spin on it.
Yep.
Kind of like Tom Savini when he did the remake of Night of the Living Dead in 1990, and he puts a few spins on things where you, having seen the previous film, think it's going this way, and then he's like,
Yep.
And yeah, I would be right there. Maybe not in the same theater, but I would be right there with you.
Savini did a great job, as we've talked about before. But this here, I think it's a masterful film to watch. And really, here's this woman who's out and alone in her house. The family she come to be with is dead. She hears a harmonica at night. She gets the rifle and just shoots out the match that got lit. I love this scene because this proves what you're saying. She's not just a damsel. She's here to fight. Like I want to know what happened to these people and who did it really. And I love the confrontation between her and Cheyenne, Jason Urbart's character, because it's really good. And he comes in and he's like, "You make coffee? Make it." It's just like, this dude's slick. And I love how she just opens a drawer and there's like this there's this butcher knife. He goes, "I hate to, don't make me," like basically threatening her in a sense, like, "Don't get me mad." And she slams the door. He's like, "What if there were a whole heap of Y's, round, yellow, the kind of goes ding?" And she's like, "I haven't found any." And he does tell her, "Well, you've looked a lot for the Y." And she has. She's looked through that whole house. Like, is there money? Did they just leave? Like, what was this about? What was their death about? And here, she actually picks up the sign, the house that has the sign on it, and she just plays with it, not realizing she's bypassed the evidence of what it is about. Again, it's a question that gets asked in the movie. Okay, what is this about? And I'll get to when the supply's alive, because one of my favorite lines in this movie is when Robert's character Cheyenne leaves, and he goes, Jill, you remind me of my mother. She was the biggest whore in Alameda and the finest woman who ever lived. He's complimenting her in every way. And it's like, and he just, there's something else he says too. He says, you deserve better. And I love the line she says. She goes, the last man who told me that is buried out there. And
Yeah.
it's one of those moments you go, oh shit. Like she's like, look, I don't want to die, but I'm not going anywhere till I find answers. In every way, she's telling Cheyenne that. And Cheyenne understands that, but he's also telling her by being there, he's telling her, hey, this was not me. This was not me and my men. We did not kill your family. And, that's what he's telling her by being there and talking to her. And then he leaves. Sorry, what were your thoughts? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, for anybody that's not seen it, we're led to believe that the family was killed by Cheyenne and his men.
Yep.
And like Joel said, we find out, he says, I didn't do this. And so, obviously, who does our attention turn to? Of course, it turns to Henry Fonda and his character. And it's without revealing too much, that house and the sign, they tell you as soon as you see that, for the biggest part, the story has come together. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, because right away, you can tell he's planning on building something. There's more, and then all the supplies show up, and we see somewhere along in there, and I don't remember exactly when, the railroad guy is talking to Frank, and you were supposed to scare him. Henry Fonda says, dead people scare easier. And it's just, and he is so blasé. Yeah, well, and it's not why. He just, they're, I mean, I was thinking about, you said it's a long film and it doesn't drag. And I was thinking, well, what about this scene? No, that if it had gone on any further, it would have started to drag. But Sergio Leone just, he cuts it right. It's a long film, and truthfully, I think if you like short films and things that are just, I can't. I'm going to speak a generalization for me and Joel. You're probably not going to like a lot of the movies we like, because not to say that some of the films that we like, you talked about wanting to do The Big Sleep. I mean, that's a movie that just moves right along. But there's some films. One of them for me was John Carpenter's The Fog. Let's bring John Carpenter back into this. I tried to watch that movie like 5-10 times. Finally, I put it in. I started it. I set the remote across the room, and I sat back down with something to drink. And once I got into the film, boy, there was no way I was stopping it. And this is another film. It may seem a little long at times, and if you're not seen it before, but everything has a point. Everything is adding to the story, adding to the ambiance, to the atmosphere. And I really don't think there is a misstep through the whole film. I mean, a lot of my criticisms on films on Facebook and stuff, this thing could have used some pacing, could have used a good actor. I'm sorry, could have used a good editor. This film, I honestly, reading about how it was cut for American audiences, I think that would hurt it. I really do. Some of the scenes I read about being cut, like, no, that need to be in there. Even the scene I don't care for with Claudia Cardinale talking to the guy at the bathhouse, it serves a point.
Yeah.
And it tells some more of the story. And it's so funny, after that whole scene that Joel described with harmonica and Cheyenne, the proprietor just turns back to her and he's like, so anyway, I was saying, and he goes right back to what he was saying, like, just another day here in the Wild West.
Right, they're so used to like the violence and the complaints. It's like, I've seen that before. But I think too, with her being from the city of New Orleans, she, again, she could easily just go back. It's not about that she doesn't just want to go back. She doesn't, but she wants to find out the truth. And I think that's what makes her a really great protagonist.
Yes.
Because and a brave one too. Everyone wants to talk about Me Too and courage. This here is courage. Here's this woman. She's coming to celebrate their wedding because they got married. No one knew about it, but her and McBain. They're dead. There's no one there that knows her to help her in a sense. Obviously, we know Harmonica and Cheyenne are going to, but she doesn't know that.
And we, the viewer, don't know that for a good while, which adds to the interesting part.
Yeah, I love when she meets Cheyenne again, and he's like, meets Harmonica again. He goes, Cheyenne's right. Once you've killed 4, it's easy to make it 5. And it's such a great follow-up of Bard's line, because it's like, Harmonica's not threatening her. He's warning her too. Like, you think you're safe here, you're not. He's telling her. And I love how he's like tearing the sleeves off her. He's like, I want water. And she tries to go to the house. He's like, from the well. I like my water fresh. They're walking out. And
who's out there, and he's drunk.
Yeah, he's trying to Frank's men. There's men that were sent by Frank, and they're watching. They're getting ready to ride in until they see Harmonica, and they're like, "Oh, we could take him." And he's like, "When you hear a strange sound, hit the ground." She's like, "A strange sound," and he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Right now, click, bam, bam." I'm like, "Oh shit!" It happens it's a nicely drawn pace scene. It happens faster than what you think, but it's so well done. It's like another shootout within this western. It's like, holy shit, this is so great.
Yeah, and that comes back around later in the film. She's taking a bath, and Harmonica's there, and he's watching Frank in this other town, and he says something like, "We're about to hear that sound again." She goes, "You mean a ducking sound?" He's like, "Yeah." "When?" "Now." And the shootout starts. It something we've kind of unintentionally tiptoed around for anybody that hasn't seen the film. Claudia Cardinale's character Jill, it was a whore.
Yeah.
Where she was in New Orleans, and maybe this is all head canon, as they say, but I always got the impression that McBain, which is obviously a great name, she was just like, she was a prostitute, and she's like, "Yeah, I love you too," and it took some time for him to convince her that he really did love her.
Yeah.
And for her to realize that she loved him. So when she left New Orleans, I mean, there's even a scene, I believe Jason Robart says, or no, Henry Fondas talks about the brunette named Jill, all of New Orleans is upset she's left.
Yeah.
She could go back, but she has, mentally set herself on this new life. And of course, when she gets there, like we've talked about, that new life, for part of it anyway, is gone. And she's like, "You know what? Screw it. This is my home. This is where my home. I decided my home's gonna be. This is gonna be my family." And like you said, she stays there, and she's not necessarily the best person to be doing this, but she gets help, and it's an interesting story of what happens, trying to not tell what happens.
Right. I love how when not just was something shows up. And there's this guy. "What do you want printed on this?" And she says, "I won't reveal what it is in case anybody wants to go see this movie. And you should go see it, goddammit." But she goes in, she runs in the house, and she's looking. And I love what Frank does. He holds something up, looking for this, and it's like, oh shit, run, lady, run.
Yep.
No, she doesn't. And I love the scene between him and her. They're laying on the bed, and he takes his fingers, "That beautiful event to the telegraph," but da 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 da. And like you said, the lines he says are just, oh my God. He's basically, without actually stabbing her, he's jamming a knife into her in a way. Like he's basically talking to her in such a manner of, hey, I could be a great husband to you, but I could also kill you. Like, he's threatening to kill her, and finally she agrees to sell. One of my favorite. I'm gonna real quick. What's your favorite? Or not real quick. Sorry. What's your favorite line in this movie?
I want to backtrack just 1 second. You said he's stabbing her with a knife, metaphorical knife. That's not all he's stabbing her with in that scene.
Yeah.
What is my favorite scene or my favorite line?
Favorite line and scene, sir.
Wow, I can't pick a line. I really can't. There's a lot of good ones.
I know.
The minute I heard "and only at the moment of dying," I was like, "Oh God, I forgot about this." So I'll go with that if you're just really dying. But there's a lot, no pun intended, a lot of great lines. You brought too many. That's
Yeah.
another one. My favorite scene is there's a lot. Again, there's a lot of good scenes. There's a odd one towards the end, before the big showdown, and Frank is sitting at a table, and he's just sitting there. And if I remember correctly, he doesn't say anything, and he's kind of putting it all together in his head. And he goes from being, if you will, a Darth Vader enforcer type character, the heavy, the lieutenant, or whatever, Grendel. Let's say he's not Grendel's mother, which is the railroad man, but he's the badass, and you can see him putting a gun. He's like, shit, and he has this funny look on his face, and in my mind, he's realizing, God, they've been playing me.
Yeah.
You see him just ride that horse up, and we know this big, the big showdown is coming, and it's kind of strange. It's for me, it just works. That's when it's like everybody has. It's not the climax, but everybody has realized that the climax is coming.
Yeah, there's a great line by Henry Fonda's Frank, and he has a lot of them in this movie. He says, "Now I know why Mort said I could never be like him. It wouldn't have bothered him knowing you were alive somewhere around."
Yep.
And that's my favorite line in this movie because it really sums up the difference between, again, I love how characters were written back, when movies were great because characters didn't try to be like another character. They were completely separate from the character they were either around, working under, working with, or opposing against. And Frank's line of that is just beautiful. And he goes, "I'm just a man." And I love Bronson's response, "An ancient race." It's so good, just to build up to the final showdown. We're trying not to spoil the movie too much because it's just a movie you need to watch.
That's that line you're talking about. It also shows that Frank and Morton is the railroad guy. I couldn't think of his name, but Joel mentioned it. They live, no pun intended, in two different worlds.
Yeah.
Frank has spent probably a large portion of his life metaphorically looking over his shoulder.
Yeah.
Most likely he's a Civil War vet, anybody at roughly that age. And he knows, kind of like Nelson McLeod in El Dorado. He has a code, if you will, but he knows what's going on. He knows what to do, and that scene shows how aware he is of his place in the world. Even if he strives to be the railroad guy in the railroad's guy world, he's like, no, that's not me.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too. Like the conversation between Morton and Frank is really good because Morton tells him, "Oh," he's like, "Congratulations. I only told you to scare him," and he's mad. He's like, "I did not want to slaughter." That's the thing about Morton. Morton's not on the same level of evil that Frank is. Not even close.
No.
But because Frank is just a cold-blooded killer. So when Frank tells him, "Oh, people scare better when they're dying," it's such a cold response to, he's saying this to his boss essentially, and Frank, they're having this conversation about business, and he's like, "You used to take care of things personally, Frank. Now you're keeping in the background." He's basically insinuating you want to be a businessman like me, but he tells him, "I feel sorry for you because you'll never understand something." And when the drawer opens, Frank draws the gun and points at him like, "I'll kill you." And he doesn't point out a gun. Morton doesn't point out, points out money. And this is one of them. You'll never understand money.
Yeah.
Because it's not about that gun there. Because this can stop that. What you're holding in your gun. Like, if I wanted to hire some people, which, again, I won't spoil it too much because we're trying not to. But again, once upon a time in the West, I said this is my favorite Western. And if you ever go watch this bad boy, you will find out why. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just in there agreeing. Yeah, it's such a good film, and it's honestly, it's, I don't want to say unfortunately, but it's best known for the opening scene and Henry Fonda playing a bad guy. That's really like the two big things that everybody knows about it, and there's so much more.
Yep.
According to one of the things I read, Sergio had said, "Nah, I'm not going to do another Western." And they tried to get him to make one with, I think, Charlton Heston and a few other guys. He's like, "No." I said, "Well, okay." Apparently, they knew Henry Fonda was his favorite actor. He said, "Okay, what if you make a Western with Henry Fonda?" He's like, "Okay." It's such an underrated film, and you could watch much worse Westerns. And in fact, you could watch much worse spaghetti Westerns, because I know this is a spaghetti Western, but it doesn't feel like your average spaghetti Western.
No. In many ways, this is, I dare say, this is Sergio Leone's masterpiece, this movie. It's the exclamation mark on his Western career. Even though he does make another Western with Fonda, I think it's called My Name Is Nobody. But this here is the exclamation mark on Leone's Western career.
Yeah.
It's such a great movie. It has great dialogue, great scenes. Like you said, there's too many to name, and there's too much dialogue and scenes to name for us to just pick our favorite because it's so damn good. And I think, if you really want to point to where, because again, like you said, it's known for the beginning, like the train should, like I see a lot of people do the Bronson line where they'll have it as like a thing, like for a pay thing where you heard Bronson say, "You brought too many." Boom, 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 boom. They'll have the shootout. But one of the best things is when you get past that is just the interaction between Morton and Frank. And then you'll hear Cheyenne and Jill, Cheyenne, and Harmonica have great interaction. I love the interaction at the where they're at the McBains. I won't spoil it, but I'll tell you what I like too. It's sort of hilarious. They're Harmonica interrupts the auction, and he says about this big money. He goes, "Did you say?" And he says the amount that Harmonica says. He said, "It's on its way," and he points it out again. And here comes Cheyenne down the steps, and Cheyenne's like, Judas wanted this much less." And Bronson's Harmonica's like, "There were no dollars in them days." And reverts, "Oh, the sons of bitches."
And that's a great scene because he's turning Cheyenne in for the bounty, and we all know. I think anybody doesn't realize right away that, of course, Cheyenne's going to get away.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to make some money. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the scene with Clint Eastwood saving Eli Wallach from being hanged, and that's how they make their money, is they turn him in, and then he saves him from being hanged.
Yeah, I love Lee Van Cleef slide in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly is so good, even though he's the heel. I like how he's like, every rat has an angel. This one has a golden haired angel. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, there's there's so many. I tell you, there's another line that I didn't really understand it when I was younger, and I'm not going to put the whole line, but you'll know what I'm talking about when I say, "Just pretend it's nothing."
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
it's, at least for me, maybe I'm reading into it too much. It worked on so many different levels and different things. Uh, especially what happens at the end.
Yep.
What I'm talking about, just pretend it's nothing.
Yep.
And I'll tell you offline what I think happened, what I would like to think happened after the film ended.
Okay.
But it's a great film. Just do yourself a favor, watch it, enjoy it. If you don't like it, and we're sorry, watch one of the other films we talked about.
I love that. But before we go, is there anything you want to add?
I think it's it, bud.
Ladies and gentlemen, go watch Once Upon a Time in the West. It's an amazing Western. We've talked about a lot of amazing Westerns. Next week, we're going to take a small break and discuss another film we both love, Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, and Howard Hawks, The Big Sleep.
One of my favorite films, and I said it before, I say it again, I'll probably say it till the day I die. I love this film, and half the time I have no idea what's going on, and I don't care.
It's a film you should definitely watch. Again, another movie you should watch it. Again, the further you go back, you just find out how well written and how well acted a lot of these movies really were. Thank you to my grandfather in heaven and my grandmother in heaven for letting me watch these movies, and yes, grandma, my grandpa let me watch what was it? Oh, Nevada Smith. But anyway, the girl, they're taking a knife to this girl's back. My grandmother's like, Ray, what are you letting that boy watch? Oh, oh, his mother showed him John Carpenter's Halloween. I'm not showing him anything any worse. Anyway. Oh God. But thank you, Grandpa. But anyway, Butch, man, thank you so much. Sorry about the late date change.
You're good.
You're awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Hit it, buddy.
You have a great night, man.
You too.
Bye.
See ya.